Welcome, everybody, to this mid-April non-dual astrology transmission. And I'm happy to say that I'm going to be deepening the transmissions over the coming months and really launching this channel. So please do subscribe, get in touch if you'd like a reading. And I hope over the process of time that you deepen your understanding of what non-dual astrology is. And I will be here to help to explain that. So for now, I really wish for you to just receive this transmission. Sometimes when we just receive the codes, it can be really, really helpful. Now, this is going to be a big time. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about here. So I'm going to do a little baby recap on what non-dual astrology is. Don't worry. As I say, over these coming months, I'm going to have many interviews with people, deeper discussions on this, so that you can just get into what is mid-April about, because I think this is an important time, and giving you the insights of the correlation of the timelines in the different systems, I think is going to help you to prepare, right? So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the fact that it's eclipse season now. We've got Mercury retrograde. That's something that will show up in both Vedic and Western astrology. We're going to talk about the wave spells in the Dreamspell calendar. I'll also talk about the Trisenas in the sacred calendar, which is the Mayan calendar, the Chokil. And we're going to look at the dance of those two systems together. Then we're going to look at a few things that show up in Vedic astrology, which is my specialism in regards to, am I a tropical Western astrology person or a Vedic astrology person? I'm more Vedic, okay? So we'll look at that, especially as in many ways, in Vedic astrology, we're just coming to the beginning of the astrological year. We're just in it now. So I think when you see what's happening in the stars and in the different systems, you really feel this acceleration of energy that's coming. And finally, I'll give a little synthesis, because at first it can be a lot for us to land with all these different systems. So I'll give you a little bit of a reading of what I see when we put all of these together. Okay. So very brief little insight here today. What is non-dual astrology? So I work with Vedic, Mayan, and Dreamspell astrology because those are the ones that I've trained in. But we also see non-dual astrology sitting in very ancient tantric lineages, like the Kalachakra Tantra, which works with Vedic, Chinese, and Tibetan astrology put together. I am a student of Kalachakra, but I haven't got as far as specializing in Tibetan and Chinese astrology yet. But what I've really found is that the triangulation between three different systems brings us to a deeper awareness of what to see that's coming up in a chart. So if we're reading a chart for a particular month, we're going to see some things that come up in the collective. If I'm looking at somebody's personal charts, we'll start to see really significant times for them in their life, very profound karmas or their dharma path, and it really helps to light something up. My own feeling is that in this time where truth is a hard thing to find, that having a triangulated system where we're dancing between these insights from different charts helps us to land with something innately that I think our bodies and our being need. There's subjectivity in everything, but when we're applying different directions or different aspects together, I think it stabilizes something for us. So I guess that's I've never quite verbalized it like that, but I hope that explains it a little bit to you. So as I've mentioned, we have things already that are being sustained, like the Kalachakra Tantra and the Kalachakra astrology. And this particular system is a very comprehensive system that has proved very valuable for spiritual adepts in the past. And we're very lucky that these teachings are now coming out to the West after a long time being sustained in Eastern Tibet, but not shared with the West or other countries. So one thing is that this whole concept of dualism confines us into a lower dimensional awareness of self and other. And we look at war, we look at bias, we look at prejudice, we look at conflicts with others, we look at when we get triggered, we look at constantly comparing ourselves to other people. Oh, they're more beautiful than I am, or all of these things. And these actually keep us very stuck in an ego state that doesn't help us to expand into our true spiritual sense of being. And a lot of people talk about love and light and being in the heart. But if we're constantly comparing ourselves and constantly following a programming that's very dualistic, it's actually very hard for us to reside in the higher dimensions for longer. So any system that's maybe looking at truth from different directions is helping us to get rid of this shackle that we have. You know, what football team do you like? Go and fight the people who are from a different football team. All of these things that actually perpetuate suffering and conflict. So for anybody in the world who really wants to harmonize within, working with tantric practices like Kalachakra astrology, which is a science unto itself, or looking at non-dual astrology can be a really good gateway to helping us to bust out of that dualistic mold, which actually usually helps us to continue residing in addictive tendencies and drama. And these things are just suffering and karma, okay? So another function of non-dual astrology is that it places the subject, the person, into a microcosmic dialogue through the body, through sadhana, through remedies, through medicine, and into a connection to the cycles of the universe. Because actually, in our human template, we are actually a fractal to a higher dimension. And both the Dreamspell calendar, to a lesser degree, the Mayan system, but it was the seeds for all of this, and Vedic astrology and Kalachakra astrology all point to the importance of different cycles of our body, what's happening in the more subtle realms in our body, the numerology of things like how many fingers we've got, how many major bones. These things all mean that as a human being, we are in a cosmic connection to the universe. And that actually we can overcome a lot of karma and suffering when we start to understand how these sciences work, because it's like a computer game, and we can actually remedy a lot of heavy stuff and actually become free to live a higher, more fulfilled life that helps all beings. So this is why I am such an advocate for this at this time. So I'm going to start with something that's common, even if you just study Western astrology. And when I say just, I'm not trying to say it's lesser. I believe that we all get drawn to different paths for a reason, and there's truth in them all if you look for it. So I'm going to be speaking of the signs that things are in Vedic astrology terms, just to keep that constant. But basically, in Western astrology, everything's 23.5 degrees later. So it is actually still in Aries when we hit the solar eclipse, but only just. We're coming into Taurus in Western astrology, but we're still in Aries very much when the solar eclipse happens on the 20th of April. We then have the next eclipse, which is the lunar eclipse on the 5th and 6th of May, depending where you are in the world. And just for good measure, we have Mercury coming into retrograde right at that time on the 21st of April. And this is going on till the 14th of May. And this is going to be in Aries again in Vedic astrology, starting off in Aries. Now, Mercury doesn't do so well in a Mars sign, and Aries is a Mars sign. And we're going to be looking at that because it's quite a prevalent theme coming up, is this concept of energies being a little bit uncomfortable around the Mars energy. And Mars, of course, it's got a lot of fire energy. It is, it can be war, it can be conflict, it can be moving very fast, it can be very disciplined to achieve a goal, but it's uncomfortable sometimes when it's playing with Mercury. And therefore, having Mercury go retrograde in Aries, it will feel a little bit uneasy at times. And Aries is very much a starter energy. It's the start of the zodiac. It has a divine spark energy, quite a pioneering energy, quite determined. It is also the baby of the zodiac, but Mercury is not very comfortable there. So we're going to find that there's a quite unsettled energy with Mars. And so communication is already under review when we have Mercury retrograde, but it's going to be pretty unsettled and agitated with this Mercury retrograde. Now, coming into the dream spell calendar, the wave spells are 13-day cycles that we go through. And we have cycles of 20 of these 13-day cycles. So a galactic spin is 260 days. And as we'll see, the Trecena system, which of course came first in the Mayan system, is the same numerology, 13-day cycles, and 20 of those in a spin. So we're currently, at the time of making this transmission, we're in World Bridger wave spell, okay? And this is World Bridger down at the right. And World Bridger is very much about beginnings and endings. It's a sign of death and transition. And of course, in every death, there is new life, something gets reborn. So we have a kind of purgative energy of sorts. It's light purging, but there may be natural endings, and we're already in the warm up to eclipse energy. And I know that quite a lot of people have gone into significant endings of old relationships or work relationships. So don't be worried. You know, eclipses are big shake-up times, and we're already under the shadow of the eclipse. And we're already in the beginning of Mercury retrograde as well. So it's very in alignment with what's happening, that we are going to be changing. Something's going to be released or moved or on or culled, and it's to make room for the new. Okay, so that might not be fully seen or felt yet, but don't worry if you suddenly realize that there was something that you thought you were really destined to do and suddenly losing significance, because it's a good time to just surrender to whatever needs to die. And of course, in the global north, we're coming to new birth. You know, the spring will kick in a more deep way very soon. So it's also, you know, the death of the winter and those months. If you're in the global north, and in the global south, of course, this is the time where everything's starting to go into winter. So we can expect that some sort of transformation is upon us, and the fact that this corresponds exactly with coming into the World Bridger. The last day of the World Bridger is the day of the eclipse. It's poignant how amazing this timing is, and yeah, it's going to be interesting because the last day of that. So this is the 21st of April. That is like a mirror. So there may be some very poignant mirrors up in your life that are very spiritual mirrors that help you to understand part of what your clearing is and the themes that are going to be there for you in the eclipse. Now, what I want to say, of course, is this is only a general reading. So we look at people's, in Western astrology, we call it North Node and South Node, but in Vedic astrology, we call it Rahu and Ketu. And where they are placed for each person, what house they're in, is going to be really bringing a lot of shift. So that's going to be up for people. And yeah, there's going to be a lot about what's a concept of independence, travel, individuality, and also, well, I'll talk about it later. We're going to be looking at a lot of Ishwini energy, which is very fast. Okay. So this, it's like it's the calm before the storm, actually, literally, because actually, as we come into we're right in the middle of the eclipse. We are in blue storm energy, and this is very purgative energy. Storm is like a deluge of energy that will purify and cleanse, but maybe not in such an easy way. It's not gentle medicine. It's powerful. It's got a lot of living light energy, a lot of living energy, with which it will purify things to a point sometimes that what we were before is not recognizable for who we are now. So we can experience a big purge in the collective over this time. And a lot of astrologers are looking at the likelihood of a lot of financial meltdown in that time. And yes, we need to hold on to our seats, but the energy will bring us new, renewed perspectives and ways of being. So it may not be altogether pleasant, and eclipse seasons are very, very rocky for a lot of people. And the fact that it sits right on Blue Storm is saying there's something big that's being cleaned collectively and individually. And it's a yang energy that's going to come, but it will catalyze new growth. Moving on to the sacred calendar. So this is the traditional Mayan calendar. Um, very soon, sorry, I'm making this just a little bit before this, we're coming into Kech Trisena. And Kech has strong leadership energy. It's the deer. And as such, it needs wilderness nature energy to fortify its connection, to help it to have that vitality and determination. And on the beginning of the Trisena, Mark Elmy, my teacher in the system, designates this day as being the origin of strength, new vitality and determination, leadership, nature, and wilderness. So if we look at this in connection to the storm energy that's coming through, it's like this vitalizing, cathartic energy that's coming through. And through that, through the wilderness, so the wilderness could be economic, it could be a dark night of the soul that some people will have, it could be loss, but through the wilderness, new meaning comes. So any rite of passage that is aligned with the nature forces has this process of death to bring rebirth. And with that, sometimes we're in this void and in this wilderness where we cannot understand or see, but through that comes new growth. So how exciting is that? And then at the very end of the month, we have Ahpu, which is the sun. And the energy of that is the new divinity quest for holiness. And so sun energy is it's quite a lot more social. It is connected to the higher self. It has an illumination energy. It can be the ego. And as we'll see, this is something we have to look out for. But it also has a divine fire energy. And we're going to see that this divine spark, divine fire energy is totally on. Now, what I find is we're just warming up. I know that every year I get really excited about, yes, it's now Aries, it's brilliant, it's New Year, but I usually find that it's actually in Taurus time that the landing into the new determination kicks in. So we're still in we're still in Aries when Ahpu is hitting in Vedic astrology. So we've got this solar energy, this divine spark energy, but it's also coming into the Taurus energy, where I think a lot of the stamina to do what we've got the insights to do comes through. So I feel like we're going to get a building of determination that's going to come through for us. Now, in Vedic astrology, we have a lot going on. So, if we had already seen in Western astrology as well that we've got these eclipses coming in, Mercury retrograde, we have big punches of energy coming through, and some of it's very, very karmic of what we are going to go through. And of course, when karma ripens, we need to understand that this is something that can be collective or individual, that is something that we've accumulated from past deeds. And when it ripens, it means that we're actually moving through something. And of course, sometimes it can seem very intolerable at the time. But when we learn to ride it, and if we have the gift of astrology, when we know that difficult things are going to come up, actually it halves the problem. Mindfulness over things creates it's like the observer effect in quantum physics. If we're observing it and we understand a little bit about it, we are able to be in a more mindful dance with it, and the effects are not so unpredictable, so excessive. And this is one of the reasons why astrology exists, is to help people who want to commit to a spiritual life to not be constantly pummeled by their karma. But it's good to know that it's going to be a little bit rocky. So first, on the 14th, we have a Gandanta of sun. And what a Gandanta is, it's a karmic knot. And when a planet moves from a water sign to a fire sign, it suddenly, well, fire and water are awkward together. Of course, it's a divine union in its own way, but it's also in many ways a sacred war. water often is seen as more feminine, and fire is seen as more masculine. And if we look at some of the most karmic situations, it's sometimes that between the genders. Okay, so there's a karma, almost as they make steam in the middle. And when it comes into the fire, the karmic knot is most deeply felt. And so Sun is coming into that. Sun is happy, however. Sun is exalted in Aries. And Sun, so that's a good thing, but we're still going to feel a karmic energy. It may feel uncomfortable. At least it's Sun there, and that's okay. But we also are going to then have Jupiter coming into, it's following suit of the Sun, and it's coming into Gandanta on the 22nd of April. So we talk about the storm energy, we talk about the depths of the eclipse energy. We are right in the middle of everything, and Jupiter is moving from where it's been very at home in Pisces to now coming to Aries. Now, Aries, Jupiter in Aries is the great benefic coming in to the divine spark energy, but it's not as comfortable as it was in Pisces, and it has that karmic rocky road to go through. Okay, and it's going to, therefore we will be probably experiencing a lot of energetic shifts and changes. And this is the whole thing, it can feel very intense because we're right in the middle of a storm. But if you know that particularly that 13 days of storm energy is a deep purification, it's a deep karmic rewire, you're going to come out with a deeper sense of self and mission. It can be okay. Now, I do need to mention that we have the Guru Chandal Yoga, which I've been talking about for some months. And this is Jupiter and Rahu conjunct in Aries, which again starts on the 22nd of April once Jupiter hits Aries. And what happens is that Jupiter and Rahu, when they're together, they cause Guru Chandal Yoga, which has auspicious outcomes, but it can also cause people to do very silly, delusional things. So Jupiter is the great benefic who wants to expand. It's guru. It can bring wealth, and particularly Dharma wealth, wealth for the collective. It can bring success in finding our higher purpose, and anything. It can bring luck. Okay. And Rahu is very materialistic and quite delusional, can be quite addictive. And Rahu is the sort of headstrong, slightly hysterical energy we sometimes get, where we get a slightly delusional, rampant idea to do something and we go for it. And so Rahu is very karmic. Everything's karmic, but Rahu is one of the nodes of karma. And Rahu has this insatiable desire to do certain things. So it's that sort of energy that might tell you that that guy over there in that bar, he's my soulmate, and you go and chat him up. And you don't know why you're doing it because you think they're a creep, okay? But you have to do it. And so it leads us into these karmic crazinesses, and almost sometimes through the sheer embarrassment, we learn our lesson, okay? So it can lead through deception. So you have these two big expanders. One is spiritual, one is material, one leads through deception coming together. So we can expand a lot, but if people are not grounded in their practice, they could run away with themselves. And that running away with themselves energy is seen here in the top right section, because we're in the nakshatra of Ashwini. And Ashwini nakshatra is energy that's very much, how would I say, the nakshatras are connected to the higher heavens. So they give these beautiful bits of soul information and themes that we're running under. And so Jupiter and Rahu are both meeting there. For a short spell, Sun is also there. And these are twins who are riding a chariot, and they are healing twins. But they're also very speedy and restless. So it's like that very divine spark energy at the beginning of the zodiac that really wants to do things, really dynamic. But if you see that Jupiter and Rahu are there, it could be very erratic, crazy, over the top growth. Now, this is also matching this uneven, crazy, dynamic energy of storm that's hitting. And so I believe that many people are going to get insights in this time, but I feel that there's going to be a real need for discernment. There's going to be the people who have a download and decide they're going to monetize it immediately and they want to set up a YouTube channel about it. And we already have people who do that. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. But then if they don't harness that energy, like the Ashwini twins need to harness their horse, they will run away with themselves and they will probably make themselves look foolish, but they need that lesson. So it's going to be a time to utilize, do acts of purification, do sadhana, meditate where you can. You may find it very hard to meditate at this time as Rahu and Jupiter come together with their different energies, and as Mercury's in retrograde in a Mars sign. This is like this clash of crazy energies. Now, not only do we have that, but Mars and Mercury are both sitting in each other's signs, which is called Parivartana. And Parivartana yoga brings a lot of strength to the two planets. So Mars Mercury is very, very excessive. And we can see that this may mean that people are going to run away with themselves, too much spark with their speech. It can also mean people may not be very compassionate in their communication. We can expect that there may be fisticuffs between different nations, scandals, things that get exposed, and people who become very offended. In fact, it's very interesting because I literally just read a message from a colleague, and I'd read about this online, but I hadn't known what was said. But given that spiritual leaders are often ahead of us, because they're so sensitive to what's going on in the cosmos, the Dalai Lama has just made an apology for telling a young boy, a young devotee, to suck his tongue. And it's like a crazy, saying something kind of silly, but now he has to apologize. So yeah, I didn't know that. I literally read that before I made this transmission. So the universe is trying to give that example through His Holiness. Even a person of high spiritual esteem by many is having to apologize for something he said. Okay, so be careful with what you say. And don't worry, these things are sometimes karma because you've got to offend somebody. Sometimes we have to offend people to get to an escalation of something that's going to demarcate our ecosystems in a better way. Sometimes we watch ourselves say things and it's almost like somebody's saying it for us and we're watching going, why am I saying this? Now, of course, it's about our ability to seek forgiveness, to express remorse when it is that time, if it is so needed. But sometimes we are actually going through the motions of cleaning something, and sometimes it just needs something else to be done to clear something, because we go in and out of resonance with people. So sometimes we say something that is going to escalate for a little while, because then in 2 years we're ripe to be friends again. We're not all best friends with everybody all the time, because we're always changing our dynamic and our energy and our karma. And I think we have to look at the need to pacify situations when it's the right time, the need to try not to exacerbate situations and to be mindful of that. And by doing yoga, working with things like our lower chakras, and if anybody, by the way, is interested in doing the work with their lower centers, we have a journey, an immersion coming up from the 18th of May. So please get in touch with Dharma Stars, because this may be for you, the way I'm saying this. So what we need to be really doing is working with the lower chakras, where a lot of our karmic imprints sit. And basically, we're going to be playing through karma. So we may be saying silly things, we may be creating little conflicts. If you would rather not create those conflicts and have to apologize to the world for saying things to a small boy, we need to really be our own security guard and work very deeply with the yogas of the lower centers, okay? And this will help this crazy excessive energy around Mars's energy, Mercury. So Mercury being retrograde, having to go back and say things again, having to review our communications, having to review our communication style. And this is something when we are doing spiritual work, is this quest to come to pristine speech. And if you heard at the beginning of this transmission, I was a little bit tongue-tied. And I'm obviously connecting myself into the timeline that we're speaking about. And I think I'm getting a little bit better. But yeah, we need to really focus on pristine speech and grounding ourselves so that we say things that really hold a higher essence of our spiritual truth, because otherwise we could be a projection of our unconscious and our wounding, and we could create conflict. So be careful, everybody. Now, Ashwini energy is also, as I've mentioned, it's this healing twins energy. So we may be getting, there's a lot of healings going to come through from this cathartic energy that's coming through. But also, I do feel that this is part of this connection to all this energy that's in Aquarius that started this year, where these new possibilities are coming, these new innovations, these new ways of computing, of healthcare, all of these things are up. Now, also, there's going to be probably a lot of karmic, global collective karma around medical institutions. And of course, we've just come out of the pandemic, and there are a lot of questions coming out. And with the karma sitting in Ashwini and such a lot of karmic energy around there, there could be a lot of questions being asked in late April and early May. And there could be new scandals around the medical establishment that come to the fore. Okay, so yeah, just keep an eye out and let me know if you notice anything. Please share in the chat box after. So I'm going to just give a little synthesis on all of this so that we can try to ground this energy. Yes, indeed, we're going to be moving through some very deep and personal collective karma. But just remember that everything is impermanent. And when something's ripening, it's giving the chance for new growth and a new perspective. And I think that at this time, a lot of people are very contracted, stuck in dualism. A lot of people are still recovering from COVID time. And it's almost like we're probably going to have a new shake-up to help us to drop the fixation over certain subjects. Now, I do feel that there will be a lot around economics and financial stability, but ultimately, when we look at the energy of the cosmos and karma and the spiritual components that they hold, the universe wants us to become more free, to be more spiritual people. And therefore, good economic shake-up is a beautiful thing. A lot of people, if we look at people who often win the lottery, a lot of them get very addicted because they weren't used to having such big amounts of money. They don't know how to handle it. They actually become very unhappy. Sometimes people come and find spirituality when they lose a lot. So we need to trust the perfection of whatever's happening in the material world, having a beautiful spiritual growth process attached to it as well. And as I've said, there will also be probably some new healing codes coming through and some new novel ways of working, but I don't feel they're fully recognized yet. But we can expect some trauma around and karma around the medical establishment coming up. We are going to go into deep catalyzing and karmic times. But I have heard some other astrologers say that they do feel, yes, we are going to have some economic shakeup. And of course, these cycles always happen. We're always going through them. But some of the analysts are saying that they don't think it's going to be as extreme as other times. But it does feel like it's creating a template for new systems. And I think that a lot of people are very worried about the kind of centralization of banks and robot people and smart cities. If we become more spiritual in our approach and less materialistic, we don't need to worry about that stuff, okay? We have the potentiality that there are countermeasures with people who are creating very decentralized, distributed networks of accounting and have been working for as long as as long as people have been talking about centralized banks. So so don't worry too much. And if you accept the spiritual renewal in this, you will not be in the clutches of the material. It will not hurt you, okay? So going through the rocky road, but actually realizing that the universe has your back is very, very potent for high healing. As I've said earlier, it's really important to have some stabilizing practices in this time. And you can even do ceremony with fire and water together to try to find the cosmic union in between. Doing tantric work, ancient tantric practices, which work with the reconciliation of the masculine and feminine within, are also really good, so that you can harness the masculine energy and the divine spark. And at the point of karma, to move actually into deeper bliss and a deeper union, to merge the wisdom and emptiness that can be there. So be careful also with your words. Try to be aware that this can happen so that the fallout is minimized. And if it's necessary to have some fallout to create growth, that's okay. But try not to be someone who's there on the rampage, because there's like the suffering part of this where we hurt a lot of people and we're wielding our wounds, and there's sometimes the necessary cull where the universe plays through and these cosmic blips happen. Try to be a cosmic blipper rather than a rampage of the lower centers. I think that's the advice here. And don't spring forth, don't set up a new channel with all your ideas yet. Harness the energy. Maybe if it's something you've been working on for a long time and you get the final spurt to go live, that's okay. No problem with that. Utilize the energy wisely, but don't be one of these people who gets a new tool and wants everybody to know about it immediately, because that's just ego and it's not going to sustain. I want to just say sorry about the sample food or text bit. I keep deleting that on my presentation, but it just keeps coming in. I quite like this presentation style, but there's little things in the design, and I'm not a specialist enough with PowerPoint to be able to do this. So just forgive me for my little technical hitches while I get used to making this channel. And finally, remember, everything is impermanent and it will bring growth, okay? We're going to have another set of eclipses later in the year. So October, November is likely to bring up another batch of things. But I feel astrologers have been saying for a long time, 2023 is the biggie. It's a real challenging one. It's a bit like another review of 2020, but slightly different energies. Once we get over this year, we're really finding a template to step forward, to start to call in the energies of a higher timeline. So ride the waves. I'm sure any of you who are on a spiritual path already found a lot of goodness in COVID time. It has so many hidden gifts. And there's always a hidden gift in any sort of process of transformation. So just hold on to your flying carpets, everybody. And actually, you can enjoy the ride if you know that this is all part and parcel of something that's coming to a higher level. If you want to see a little bit more about what may be in store for the next 10 years, I've made a very basic tutorial. It's about 2 hours long, but it's in 2 sections, which talks a little bit about some of the prophecies coming up and some of the energy of the coming years. It's a very basic analysis to get you grounded in the field. But as this channel develops, I'm going to be going deeper and deeper into the themes so that we can play our part in helping people to clear in their timelines and to come to non-duality and come to a higher timeline and to dedicate that to the collective. So I want to give gratitude to you all for listening. I want to give gratitude to the day keepers of the Mayan lands, to Mark Elmi, my teacher of the Mayan system, to Jose Arguelles and his students for the Dreamspell calendar, and to the Rishis, celestial bodies, and to Ganesha, the patron deity of Jyotish, the science of light. Om Shrim Ganganapataye Namaha.